Hi guys, hi girls. This first video is gonna be about what it's called the explanatory gap, and I also rephrase it as how come we are not zombies. I decided it was gonna be the first video because it's what got me started. It was like the start of the journey that determined what I liked and read and investigated further on. So before starting, I want to clarify a couple of concepts, a couple of things. It's a topic in philosophy of mind. Okay, it's a way. It's a problem that emerges when you try to explain the mind and fit it into a conception of the world. So fit it into your philosophical view. The philosophical view that it's gonna be problematic for that it's gonna face this problem, the explanatory gap. It's called physicalism. Physicalism is a doctrine. Okay, it's a philosophical perspective that defends an explanation of the mind in terms of physical terms. So that's why it's called physicalism. With physical terms, we mean material, like materialism in philosophy. That's a broader term. But when we say physicalism, it's constrained, or it puts the emphasis that is we're talking about entities and things that we can measure through science. So perhaps it is not something we can see, but it is something we can predict and observe through scientific progress. That's a little difference. And now also I'm going to be talking about phenomenal zombies. Phenomenal zombies is what I call zombies of consciousness, because every time you read in the literature, or if I say it phenomenal, it's going to mean conscious. It's going to mean this subjective point of view about the world. So the fact that we are aware of things, that is phenomenal experience. Also, one more thing, when I will talk about the possibility of zombies of consciousness, I will explain what it is later. It's not about whether they actually exist, like in this world or in other worlds, like in other planets. It's more about their logical possibility. Is that given the knowledge and explanation that we have in the present moment, could we think that this could happen, that phenomenal zombies could exist? Okay, so it's more like logical possibility than anyone believing that they actually exist. It's a conceptual problem. Okay, so being this said, let's start. When we think about conscious experience, we can consider the way we interact with the world. So we receive an incredibly rich flow of experiences, right? We appreciate the beautiful colors of a sunset. We enjoy delicious foods, which have incredible flavors, different ones all over the world. We experience sensations like pain, or the softness of some very soft cat. All of these subjective experiences are what we call conscious experiences, and it can vary among people. A person can feel lower or higher levels of pain, etc. Now imagine that the human population had no conscious experience whatsoever. So that they were like turned off, that we were living in the dark, but that we continued to behave the same way we did before, and that would go unnoticed. That everything is turned off. We don't have this qualitative experience of the world, but we just respond to the stimuli that we receive, and we respond to them, and it all keeps going, but we just don't subjectively feel anything. Those are zombies of consciousness, or phenomenal zombies. And the question is, can you imagine such a world? Is it imaginable? Well, this silly question that at first it may sound like quite absurd, it has made philosophers argue a lot whether such a world is possible, where it's conceivable, where it makes sense or not. And the reason for thinking about this has to do with the explanations we seek, that we want for explaining our world. So we want explanations that allow us to understand things and phenomena around us in physical terms. Yeah, like we said before. We want to be able to detect the things that are in the world that determine the phenomenon we're investigating. And so, for example, of the phenomenon of rain, raining, we don't want to believe that it's a whim of the gods or a voluntary, arbitrary decision of someone that's up there in the clouds. We want an explanation like it's a condensation of water vapors, for example. And once we know this, that is the condensation of water vapors, we've discovered that this is what it is, then we realize that it is not possible for our world to have heavy condensation of water vapors, what we said it was rain, without rain, right? How can you conceive of that happening? The fact that the clouds have condensation that is heavy enough that they fall without rain. But that is rain. So we can't separate those things, and that's why some would argue, that some would say that it's not even possible to imagine it, because the connection is so tight, the explanation is so right, that it's not possible to imagine one without the other. So that is more or less what we're seeking with conscious experience and a physical explanation of it. And that's why the zombie scenario is interesting. In the case of consciousness, just like we didn't want rain to be explained as a whim of the gods, we don't want consciousness to be explained by a soul or some kind of intelligence, some abstract thing, immaterial substance or something like that. But both cases, rain and consciousness, are different. When we seek a physical explanation of our conscious experience, we encounter an explanatory gap. That there is a void between what is conscious, what we don't want to explain, and what is physical, what we want to be the explanation of what's conscious. Now, let's imagine a kind of explanation that we expect conscious experience to have. So, let's take the example of hitting your toe against a piece of furniture, and well, that is painful. And we analyze that. We come, technology advances, and we come to see that our conscious, very noticeable pain experience is explained by the activation of what we then call pain neurons. Okay, this is just a mental experiment, so to speak. We named it. We named these neurons like that because we've related them to pain. Now, pain neuron activity is pain the same way that heavy condensations of water vapors is rain. Great. So they are both physically explained, right? They're reduced. There's a perfect identity. Well, let's check it. The explanation for rain, it shows why that is so. It shows why the heavy condensation of water vapors is rain. It would go something like this. Vapors in the air pass from gas state to liquid state, and they pour down in the moment the water is too heavy to hold up in the cloud. Yeah. This makes us think that we've reached a good explanation, because it makes them inseparable, right? Because we understand the link. We see how the one is the other. We see why heavy condensation of water vapors is rain. But this does not apply in the case of pain, because what exactly about pain neurons, this firing activity of our brain that supposedly accounts for pain, explains anything about our conscious experience of pain, about the qualitative, about the character of pain, about how it feels. These neurons could be causing any other sensation, like the strawberry flavor, you know? There's nothing linking one and the other, so that means that we don't have a way of understanding how they're tied together. So what we would say is that a gap remains. A gap between the conscious and the physical stands in the way, and there is no imaginable way of linking them both, like pain neuron activity and pain feeling. So that we have nothing really to acknowledge that we are talking about the very same thing, and that is the goal of our the explanations we seek. At least not in the way rain and water vapors do. Yeah, there's a difference there. So this explanatory gap, in a nutshell, what it means or what it implies is that nothing raises the alarm. Nothing is actually contradictory or disturbing when we imagine a being that is physically identical to us. Everything that is physical to us remains the same, but that is lacking conscious experience, that has no phenomenal experience, has no first person impressions of life and of things, and no real problems arise from that scenario. There's no way to say that it's impossible, that couldn't exist in the same way we could say water vapors, which are condensated, is impossible. That does not translate into rain. So only when we begin to bridge the explanatory gap, when we reveal how the physical is related to the conscious, will we understand how, or will we make sense of how come we are not zombies of consciousness.